Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a left-wing podcast on media, politics, deception, manipulation, hanging out with your bros, and much more.
Spy thrillers,
Yeah,
film noir.
Or the Jason Bourne of podcast.
We don't know who we are, but we're badass. We have shaky hands.
We're amnesiacs.
yeah, now with sundowning. I'm Alex.
I'm Aiden.
I'm Jason.
This is Aiden's week to kick us off.
All right, back to our roots. Pure news through and through. Every story a banger.
Let me tell you something about the news.
You kids don't know. In my day, the news was nothing but darkness. We're gonna start.
You have to climb uphill both times to get the news.
Yeah, exactly. In the middle of winter. And we'll start with not darkness, but with gray, specifically the Gray Lady. From the New York Times, Europe, the dark continent, is the stage for another great migration.
The dark continent of Europe?
Europe is the stage for another great migration. I mean, they're kind of right, but I don't know. I don't really know what they're implying. I mean, I know what I'm thinking when I think of the coming migration crises that are going to happen. But
Every part of this is weird. What was the other great migration or migrations they're referring to?
I think they're talking about the turn of the century when Eastern and Southern Europeans came to America.
So usually, and I'm not even just talking about like the racially, but also just like in colonial terms, dark continent usually refers to Africa.
Right.
So are they doing some sort of like pithy joke where it's like, the other white meat, like they're trying to like invert who's referred to as the dark continent for some sort of purpose? Because I don't get it.
No, I think they're just saying Europe's going through a dark time right now.
Yeah, it really sucks to be European in 2022 compared to
Yeah.
anywhere
Right
else.
now.
That
Having
was
a mental health crisis.
That was the biggest weird thing about the headline. That was just very strange because dark continent is almost always, not almost always, is always used, has historically been used to refer to Africa only, and to transplant it onto Europe, the ones who gave Africa that name for very imperialistic colonial context. It was very strange. Like I have to feel like it's a tongue in cheek because the other option is just that they're like trying to say, hey, we're suffering as much as Africa was during the colonial period, or at least the 1800s colonial period as opposed to modern colonial period. It's very, very weird choice. Great migration is such a dramatic term for which is, we are seeing millions of Ukrainians fleeing Ukraine, but everything about it just felt very weird. Like great migration sounds like, I don't know, brings to mind like, millions of buffalo moving across the continent.
Well, to me, it's like Great Recession. It's like what they call it? Everyone quit their jobs in the pandemic because it sucked.
Great, like resigning.
Yeah, Great Resignation.
Great Resignation.
Like,
yeah.
They just want to say like this is a moment that history will remember. It's like no one cares. Nothing is significant. Stop trying to pretend like you were there when the shit was real. It's like when Hillary Clinton was like, I was at the civil rights events. Oh, please believe me. Like, no, this isn't some great moment of import. It's just humans hurting each other, and it's the same every year.
Well, so the language of dark continent makes me think they're trying to talk about like colonialism, but against white people this time, which makes me think they're trying to turn Putin into like the Belgians and Europe into the Congo or something. Like I don't quite understand that. It's almost like they're sliding into the fascist rhetoric in Europe where they're like the immigrants are going to destroy us kind of thing, but they don't want to say that directly, so it has to also paint them as somewhat sympathetic. So it's like the immigrants are going to destroy us, but it's Putin's fault.
Yeah, Putin
I think
is King Leopold.
Yeah. So we're going to get flooded with Africans and Muslims, but it's the fault of colonialism, which is kind of like the liberal perspective on how to be a fascist. And now it's just the equivalent for Europe, which is we're going to get flooded with Ukrainians and it's Putin's fault.
But the problem is Europe has always been the midpoint for all this migration anyway. Like when Syria was falling apart a few years ago, those people fled through Eastern Europe and into Europe, and then a lot of them tried to get to here, but a lot of them stayed in Europe. Like, Yeah, because immigration happens to Europe, because that's what makes sense. Because that's what happens when everyone surrounding it is like becoming a failed state, either through their own stupid action or like Western imperialist action.
Well, yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head, right? I mean, the Middle East would be the logical place that's just like a crossroads. What the Europe is a beacon of victimizers rather than victims, so they have functioning
But they
economies.
have
They
have functioning states where people are trying to flee to so they can live, even though it's those states that ruined their home.
Well, the end state of colonialism is the colonized flee to the colonial powers' home countries because they're still functional,
right?
Which is the exact opposite of what the colonizers wanted.
Or is it?
No, it's not really ambiguous, but okay. Like, no one's happy whether they be the immigrants or the home countries. With
but it's like, but it allows Gorka to say they're trying to destroy our white culture. Like it feeds into the fascist cycle.
Yeah,
well, yeah.
The odd fox is becoming Muslim. All right, thanks.
I mean, yeah, we just talked about a few months ago now an article that was about like the enormous Syrian migrant crisis on the border of Bosnia, I think it was.
Also, what happened to the Mexican caravan of mongrels that were going to cut in hordes of orcs that were supposedly going to like take over America that they were trying to gin up for the 2020 election? Where'd those people all go?
Well, that one was also sickening because not only was it a relatively small amount of people, it was like people fleeing political crises that the U.S. caused.
Yeah, but
because it was us stirring up shit in their home countries in Central America.
Republicans were all up in arms about the fucking migrant river, the fucking Nazgul trying to cross the horse river, and then it's like, I guess that went away. I guess we're on to something. Well, I guess we're on to Russia now. Like,
well, yeah, because it was always bullshit.
They just drop a story. I'll move on to another bullshit.
Well, it turns out that like 5,000 or 10,000 people, whatever it is, over the course of a year is not only basically nothing, but fleeing like death squads that were funding and, whatever the fuck Central American country they were fleeing from is not exactly a thing that we want to dig too deep into, is it? Because if we dig into why they were coming here, it's almost always because we destroyed the country they were coming from.
Whatever happened to the freedom trucks? Aren't those fuckers still going?
Yeah, they got a lot of grievances.
Their big caravan.
Maybe we should teach like the Guatemalans to roll coal.
That'd be productive.
Well, let's keep on the theme very briefly of immigrants, and we mentioned one of the countries in the course of this. This next immigrant is from Washington Post. Afghanistan's last finance minister, now a DC Uber driver, ponders what went wrong.
This is just like all the stories about the Jan 6ers who like failed up, and like I'm now delivering pizzas, but it's instead of being a fucking traitor, it's like a former crony we had installed there. That's great.
Really bleak.
Yeah, it's extremely bleak.
He probably has the sickest stories if you get his Uber. I gotta meet this guy.
Holy shit.
Gotta take a trip to the White House.
He was managing the finances of an entire state, and now he's like a minimum wage worker, but if that.
Yeah, and Washington Post just wants to do an interest piece on him to get his take on what went wrong. I'm sure it's a very sympathetic and broadly considering piece that they've written.
But this was essentially like a Bush era installed guy, or do we not know that much about him?
This face is exactly what I thought he'd be making.
Yeah.
Bad face.
That's a man pondering what went wrong.
It's a man pondering the gun.
He's sage.
That he has.
The problem is he probably deals with more disrespectful people here than there.
Yeah, everyone here's gonna be like, thanks for doing 9/11. Like, no one's gonna think through that he's almost certainly a U.S. ally.
No, I mean he's like has to be subjected to Uber passengers with 4.5 ratings and below. Like true scum of the earth.
Exactly.
Worse than terrorists.
The worst of the worst.
He has to drive like drunk GW girls to and fro. Something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Those harpies around the mention.
I don't know. I don't know about his culpability in the American constructed Afghan regime.
Oh no, I'm sure he just got wrapped up in it somehow.
But it's just
couldn't possibly have been like an embezzler and extorting and fucking people over and deciding who wins and loses contracts and deals and.
I mean, if you were really a capable scammer, he would have been able to get a chunk of that cash
Yeah,
that the
exactly.
president flew
Yeah.
in.
I mean, let's put it this way: there's two possibilities. He's either totally incompetent,
which tracks,
or he's not. And if he's not, then there's something truly like existentially terrifying about knowing how Uber works and still agreeing to be an Uber driver. Like, because if you understand that you're probably going to lose money over time,
maybe
rather than
he's
make money
bought
over
in
time.
hook, line, sinker to like the American way. It's like, I tried to bring it to Afghanistan. I'm curious why, but don't know why it didn't work.
But like the people at the high end of Uber know that the people at the low end don't make money, and he's supposed to be at the high end of understanding finance and economics. So this is troubling, to say the least. It's like someone who's like, "Oh no, I run Ponzi schemes. Also, I'm entering a new one." It's like, what? How do you not know that that's a rigged game? I don't understand.
It's funny. I was just listening to a thing about Mormons in Utah and why they're good at MLMs, and it's because they actually have enough of a social group that they can downstream and succeed and actually like keep pawning it off to new people and make money at them. It's insane.
Well, yeah, but that
It's
only
like
goes so far because someone has to lose out at the
yeah,
bottom. Of
eventually
that
someone
Mormon
gets fucked,
chain.
but they have such big social circles that they have tendrils that reach far to fuck over their other friends.
I was gonna say, it just sounds like Mormons are good at being victimized by each other.
No, but they usually end up being the middlemen who make the profit. What I'm saying is, it's like the tumor thing, where it's like they're so big, their social circle so big that they actually kind of peel off a profit on MLMs, which is why MLMs are like the second biggest industry in Utah besides tourism.
Well, unless they're convincing non-Mormons or something, it sounds like they're still fucking other Mormons.
How many Mormons are there in
Lots.
America? It's like millions of them.
Yes, and across the world. I was just watching a whole thing on them. Very scary.
How did this come to pass, do you think? Like, could he not get another job?
The Taliban were taking over his office, and he fucking took the CIA code plane and said Tom Brady, and they let him on. They flew him to America. And he couldn't find work because everyone's like, fuck you. And he says, all right, I'll work for Uber, I guess.
I know we installed you for like a decade as a U.S. puppet finance minister in this country, but even though we're going to rescue you and bring you to America, we're not going to make sure that you have any kind of employment that makes any sense given your credentials.
You can't even be a mediocrely paid person with decent benefits working in like some accounting office.
Maybe this article being written will rise his job prospects. Maybe some like Bain Capital would want to hire him.
Yeah, maybe the CIA will see how desperate he is and try to turn him into some kind of patsy.
So like turn him into like another pawn in some purpose. Like I don't know. I don't get how fucking disloyal are our agencies that this is the outcome, right? Because like he did their bidding. I assume it was a U.S. occupied country. Like if he wasn't one of ours, we wouldn't have rescued him. We would have just left him there for the Taliban to strap like electrodes to his balls. So I don't know what. Like, how does this happen? I guess I just don't understand.
Because there's no plan. Because America doesn't have like, here's our exit strategy and how to help you. They say, fuck it, you're on your own. Tough noogies. I was going to suggest he starts like a prank YouTube channel where he just does like fake terrorist threats and he gets lots of all the views.
Jesus Christ.
And he'd have like real world experience.
You want a guy who's actually Afghani, who's in a precarious situation to make fake terrorist threats?
That's where them views are at, son. Gotta get that.
You'll get views from someone, but it's not who you want.
Yeah, they got his back. They know who he is.
Yeah,
really making fun of all the prank channels that do like racist, evil shit.
Really seems like they have his back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was obviously the other part that struck me as just debris, absolutely discarded without thought, because it was possible.
I mean, if you're ever thinking of collaborating, right? Like, if you're anyone else in the rest of the world who's thinking of collaborating with a U.S. occupation or U.S. like puppet government, this is your end state, which is total abandonment and pathetic, like curb kickery. Because like being an Uber driver is like worse than unemployment, as far as your expected income. So this is horrifying.
It's poor pay without benefits, and you have to deal with some of the worst, most unkind people possible for ungodly hours. It's really terrible. But let's I guess I'll take advantage of that segue. Speaking of terrible,
you should be taking advantage of the DC segues.
There it is.
So you really get around there.
From Wall Street Journal, unsurprising news. Boris Johnson visits United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, seeking more oil.
All right, chaps. Now, I understand that we probably put your granddaddy to death, and we've been stealing all your shit forever. But please, some more oil, please, sir.
I mean, they're already their allies, aren't they? Like, this is the same two countries that are getting U.S. support to destroy Yemen. Like, I have to assume they're part of the British, American, NATO, whatever the fuck allegiances. That the only reason they wouldn't already be giving them oil is because they're just trying to get more money for it.
I know we made an awful humdinger of that situation, but please, chap needs more biscuits and gravy and new children. Like, Boris going to use his world-class convincing techniques on these people. God, Boris Johnson's such a scumbag.
Yes, yeah. Of course, Alex, you're correct. I think they're just trying to beg for the taps to be opened even more. Something that Saudi Arabia has recently rebuffed Biden's requests for. Of course, we still, like yesterday, sold them 1,000 more Patriot missiles, which is awesome. It's just unconditional weapon supply. They not even doing the one thing that we expect them to do, which is to be an unethical but moderately loyal ally in the area.
The good thing is only Patriots can use those. They have a DNA sequencer that only a Patriot can fire them. So
Patriot to somewhere. It doesn't actually matter where.
Yeah. Test your heart.
I mean, the other problem with this, even besides the obvious bizarre and unethical scamming going on in both directions here, is we can't keep burning this oil. Like, the whole point is that this is horrible for the environment and we can't stick to that trajectory, which is why this is not a future that is sustainable regardless of what's going on in Ukraine. But once again, we let a temporal crisis in Ukraine suddenly be like, well, I guess it's time to push green energy back another 20 years because now's not the time. It's like, well, when is the time, right? Like, if Russia, which is a major oil provider, is no longer someone we want to trade with, isn't that the perfect time to start transitioning green? So we should just stop worrying about that bullshit. Like, why are we doing this instead of being like, let's go to Scandinavia and say, can we force your universities to research green energy for us faster or something? Like, it just seems like this is not a solution in any way, and it's really obviously not a solution when all the major oil-rich states are like horrifying tyrannies that we have to negotiate with.
Yeah, it would be an incredibly more ethical way to produce power, both in terms of who we are forced to align ourselves with, and of course the fact that we're contributing to the death of the earth. If we were almost entirely, and hopefully eventually entirely, using renewable energy, and as I've seen op-eds from hawkish people saying, it would also make us more secure in cases like this where we're actively in a deadly military contest with someone who holds a vast supply of oil. So it's like it's just really indicative of what a absolute vice grip on the balls of the world and of America oil companies have, and oil producers have, that even in this case where it's all cream to switch to renewable energy, just kick that can down. Let's not even look at it, because that's not where the money's coming from at the moment.
Like, I understand it's probably not like especially healthy for us to constantly militarize our rhetoric and be like it's a national security issue to go green, but it is. Like, that's not incorrect. It's not the only reason to do it. But when we are able to be held hostage by Putin's Russia or the Saudi monarchy, or in the case of let's say they turn actively hostile to us, which they should at this point, though don't, like the Venezuelans. I mean, if we're hostage to any of these countries for their oil, and we are because we need as much as we could possibly get, well, then they could just dictate terms to us and do ridiculous bullshit. I mean, what price at the pump is it going to reach before we're like, okay, this isn't working? $10, $15? Like, what's it going to take? Because Europe's already seen like $8 and $9 prices before this recent event, and they're still somehow on gas. So I just don't know what it would take, as you say, besides every single thing lining up saying this is no longer a good idea, for us to go, this is no longer a good idea.
Yeah, there just doesn't really seem to be a breaking point. It's just like we've seen with like mass shootings. That line, it just keeps getting pushed further and further down the road. Keeps bending and bending, way past the point that I thought it could. But here we are.
Also, it almost makes me think like they don't want it to work if they sent Boris Johnson.
Yeah,
because like, has he accomplished anything good ever? I don't think so. Like, he's just like a laughingstock at this point. If they really wanted this oil, they should have sent someone who's going to be the next PM in 6 months. Because every time that one of their PMs is clearly on the out, they're just like dead weight to anything they attach it to.
I guess maybe because like MBS will be at ease knowing that there's no way that this guy is scheming anything.
Yeah.
He's just too foppishly inept.
Yeah, they're definitely an appropriate match.
Yeah.
I just like that Boris Johnson and MBS are in charge of their respective countries while this guy drives an Uber. It just seems that's the world we live in.
That is the world we live in. Take it or leave it. Well, on fossil fuels, in a case of unsurprised but still disappointed, John Stewart has a new show. You guys aware of that?
I was not actually.
Yeah, he's a new series on Apple Plus. And this was making the rounds on the internet. This was the tagline or the thesis for, I think, last week's episode from The Problem with John Stewart.
Oh, I guess I did hear about that. Sorry.
We should hold fossil fuel companies accountable, but they are not our enemies. They are our frenemies.
What?
They're it's a love-hate relationship. There are things to criticize, but there's also things to like.
Okay, let's start. Let's see if I understand this one because I'm not sure. Is we the United States and its citizens? Is we the West? Is we the just the American government? Who is we? Because I don't even understand the sentence.
We as in we are the world.
Because if we is like anyone other than OPEC nations or the West, then they have no relationship to this in terms of favorable ones. I'm assuming since he's talking about we, including himself, it's something to do with like America or American government, American people.
Probably America, because Stewart tends to be fairly America-centric.
So let's run with we, meaning the American people, which is I think the most generous version of this we could use. In what way have oil companies been our friends? Ever at all? I don't understand this.
They make my car run. Thus, they're my friend, and that's all other actions that we don't need to discuss. Whether it's knowing about climate change for decades and hiding that information, or like every other corporation forcing dependency through lobbying.
I think we've talked about this show before. I guess I just forgot. Just like we mentioned at some point that this was going to be a thing. And it remains ironic to me that John Stewart, for whom I have said consistently, can identify the problems but not the solutions, is running a show called The Problem. But here I feel like he couldn't even identify the problem. They are unambiguously a problem. Like anyone who thinks the oil companies at this point are our frenemies should not be running a show. That's not a thing. Like, first of all, Frenemy has like almost like a fun, sociable, like mean girls kind of vibe to it.
Patty,
But unless we're going with like a Citizens United definition, something tells me that you can't really have an oil company as your frenemy. Like that's just not. They're not an entity. They're not a being that can have that kind of nuance.
Corporations are people, my friend.
Where have you been?
Sorry, that rap gave me problems.
You can always say pause.
No need. When the show must go on. Stiff upper lip and all that. I had some really good Boris Johnson cracks, but I had my own crack problem.
Jesus.
All right,
ass crack.
That's a wrap on that bit.
Yeah, I just don't. I like, is John Stewart losing his shit over time? I don't understand.
I was trying to scream this from the toilet. John Stewart sucks now, by the way. He's garbage. He's become like a boomer in not just his actual age, but his politics. He's be like, come on, guys, let's just come to terms with the system. It's like, no, absolutely not. Fuck yourself.
Yeah, I saw a clip of this, and it was just a short clip because I'm not subscribed to Apple Plus. I honestly, I'm not sure I would watch a whole episode after this, but he seemed to be basically saying we need oil. These companies are too powerful to coerce through the means that I understand, which is the means of modern capitalism and American capitalism. So what we need to do, and I think he literally said this, is bribe them, find ways to bribe them so that they feel like following some limited amount of government directive is in their interest, which is just like the most venal, like narrow-minded, pathetic thinking I think I've heard in a while from someone who is not an overtly conservative host. And to hear it come from John Stewart, who I still have fond memories of um, from
Don't worry, you shouldn't.
from middle school, it was just like I knew it wouldn't live up to my memory, but this was just pathetic.
Is it one of those cases where it's like he used to be pretty good and then has sunk, or he was never that good and we just had so little available at the time? Because I'm mostly inclined to think the former, since there's definitely some things he said that I remember being positive, but I've also gone back and seen some clips that are astonishingly shitty from that time period. Like, well, I'm not even going to say them because they piss me off to even talk about. But
No one is watching his show on Apple Plus because no one has Apple Plus because no one's getting scammed that hard.
I don't even know what Apple Plus is.
Exactly. So what they're doing now is posting more and more of the show on YouTube. And that's why I've been seeing it more and more lately. And it's just, he's so tired. He's so burnt out and sold out. It's just garbage. Just garbage all around. So, you know what? This probably is his and his production studio's worldview. Keep in mind, this whole show is funded by Apple. Like one of the evilest, largest, techist corporations. So this shouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, just like I don't understand why someone who was already quite successful and well regarded would come back to do a show if it wasn't because he felt like a moral urgency to speak to these issues. Like
For the money.
he's financially secure, I have no doubt. Like, I guess this is what I'm saying. I don't understand rich people who are like, I'm comfortable for the rest of my life in relative luxury and I have a good reputation. Let me come back to get moderately more luxury and ruin my reputation. That always confuses me.
Yeah, I mean, he could have spent the rest of his life, as you say, living in comfort and quietly fighting for first responders as he's been doing. It's like that would have been a perfectly good way to spend the rest of your life into the twilight. But yeah, I mean, either he's made some bad investments or he just felt like things were becoming too divisive and he needs to be a bridge. John Stewart saves American politics. I don't know. And just like I never expected him to be a leftist, but to not even consider some form of nationalization of the energy sector as like to just even mention that, even if he were like, well, that would fix it, but of course we can't do that, or that's too radical or whatever. It's just like it shows such little imagination. And yeah, I do think like his main assets were that he was able to attack right wing ideas in an incisive way. He was articulate and smart, but as you have pointed out, both of you, he never had the solutions, and he never really had the ideas, the kind of political perspective of anything outside of the strictures of what the tenets of liberalism suggest.
Look how fast I am with the art.
Just going with the sentence here, if he was competing in the 2020 Democratic primary, he'd be the second most right-wing candidate, right? Because only Biden was less critical than this of energy companies and the lack of green energy that we're pursuing. But if you look at a sentence like we need to hold them accountable, but they're not our enemies, not only does that miss the boat on whether they're our enemies, which they definitively are, but you can't hold them accountable because that implies that they can still operate without destroying the world. It's like, okay, you're going to destroy the world, but you're going to do so cheaply or something. You're not going to rip off the American public while you're destroying it. That's not an option, right? Like if we actually take seriously the idea of preventing global climate catastrophe in our lifetimes, then these companies need to stop existing, or they need to be converted into some sort of green energy sector and get maybe allowed to pursue that. But like, they cannot continue as they are in any form, let alone being like, oh, they need to, we have to check their books. That's not even the correct kind of thing to say if you understood the problem, right? The problem isn't that they're like scummy capitalists, and they're ripping off the American public at the pump. I mean, that's an issue, but it's not the main issue. So it's a baffling misunderstanding of the primary issue with these companies.
Yeah.
To me, one, I'm sure it's some kind of in joke. I'm sure he's not just being totally sincere and genuine. He's making jokes. But the problem is the relationship is not among two equal peers. The oil companies are essentially the bullies who are also like the class valedictorian, where they have the most like clout and support and stature, and they are the rich dad. So they have the most money. They're threatening. They're scary. They're big. They're strong. They're powerful. They're handsome. So all you can do is like kill them or buddy up to them and like ride their coattails, be a barnacle. And that's kind of what John Stewart's admitting. Like we can't just be totally opposed to them. They will win. So we have to find a way to convince them to slither and whisper in their ear, "Oh, please do the right thing for us. Like it'll be in your interest." And it's just not going to happen.
This is just like Stockholm syndrome.
Yes, correct. And that is that is perfect. You nailed it. That is what he suffers from. This entire show suffers from. He has been beaten into submission by his life as a political satirist, and he's like past satire now. He's just Stockholm. So he's like, well, guys, I guess we have to give the Republicans a chance. Let's give Biden a chance. No. Oppose until death.
I mean, saying we should hold fuel companies accountable is already a right-wing thing. You have to hedge your bets by then putting a comment saying, but anything? Even the first part wasn't enough. He's hedging on hedging. This is asinine.
And it's why it doesn't work as comedy either.
We should slap sex offenders on the wrist, but not too hard. Like that's what this is. You're not going far enough in the first place. It's like we should resist fascism, but politely, and only in the margins. Like
it's also to pretend that we have the means to just be like, one, as you say, actually hold them accountable to anything. The options are destroy them with violence or state take them over with military violence. Those are the options.
Or if you force them to pick one of those things after you do it without violence, you say like, all right, we're nationalizing you. And they can either try to resist that violently and lose, or they can just surrender. Because, if you just say, all right, this industry is nationalized now, you're done. They would have to decide to fight the state, which they know they'd lose. So they give
the
up.
problem is Mitch McConnell would get the National Guard on his side, be like, well, we can't do that. It's not constitutional.
All right, well, nationalize Mitch McConnell and turn him into a fucking frog or whatever. Turtle, throw into a coal engine. All I'm saying is the reality is states have the power to do things which we've all now mentioned, which is like nationalize an industry or totally change the laws and rules on how it operates. And that's well within the power of the state. So pretending as though we don't have the leverage here is silly.
America seems to have forgotten, though, that the state has coercive power over corporations. The state is totally captured by corporations, and the only people it can coerce are foreign nations and our own people protesting. Those are the only strengths of coercion our states used in the last 40 years.
I mean, if we can overthrow entire countries because a fruit company wants to make profit, I feel like we can just destroy a fruit company. It just seems like it's the easier of the two things to do. It's not difficult to go like, hey, these horrifically evil oil companies who've literally sponsored state terrorism, overthrow regimes, manipulated the American government,
thrown lawyers in jail.
Right, like these companies, which are unambiguously not just the enemies of the American people, but enemies of humanity writ large. To say we need to give them some credit, we need to use the soft kids gloves when dealing with them. It's like, are you insane?
Yeah,
this wouldn't even make sense even outside of the green energy issue.
They are a demigod, and we need to harvest their elder soul. They're the enemy. They're the antagonists. They are the boss fight. Anyone who thinks they're the friends don't get the message. And you know what? Maybe John will hear our satire and he'll invite us on to have a nice little lively talk about it.
But I mean, I guess the problem...
Outdated motherfucker.
The only problem I have with the interpretation we've had so far is, as you say, maybe this is just a joke. Maybe this isn't what he actually believes, but the problem is nothing gives us counterfactuals like that. It's not like he said, just kidding, fuck them. He didn't give us any way of jokeifying this gibberish.
I watched this ridiculous 30-minute segment on how John Stewart was shocked that the idiots on Wall Street bets beat a hedge fund. That's what he's spending his time on. He's just a crank now. He's just a 60-year-old man. all the light and spirit and wonder and humor is gone. It's all gone. It was gone years ago.
Well,
And they are shipping out his emperor's corpse to feed with souls for the next 10,000 years.
Yeah, it certainly didn't. The 1 minute or whatever I saw, it certainly seemed like he was solemn and serious. But you know what? I'll hold that hope that at the core of that, there's some very, very deep, dry humor behind all this. Yeah, disappointing but unsurprising, as I started off by saying. But on the topic of accountability, let's move overseas again from Al Jazeera. Kazakhstan president proposes reforms to limit his powers.
Wow, really?
That's what the headline says.
One, I don't believe them. But two, even if I did, that's impressive. That is basically the stage of political revolution that never gets to have or happen. Oh, and once we have this phase, they will relinquish power voluntarily, and that never happens.
Well, I actually know a little bit about this, but I guess that's kind of cheating.
Having knowledge is not cheating.
This is the result of serious political unrest in that country that resulted in almost like martial law and civil conflict. And so it's one of those, it's kind of like, Magna Carta, like the president's realizing that if he wants to retain his position, he needs to start making compromises that appeases the public. And so making modest reforms that are like, okay, I won't have a lifetime term, and total indemnity from any kind of, resistance would presumably placate them enough that they're not going to, execute it or overthrow him.
Does this have any connection to the Azerbaijan-Armenian thing? Because I know they're in the region.
I mean, kind of like they're both on the outskirts of the former Soviet Union, but Azerbaijan and Armenia have been in conflict for almost 40 years.
Yeah, but it's been recently. There's been flare-ups that have been bad.
I mean, there was that war fairly recently, but they're not like direct neighbors, so I don't think so. Yeah, they're separated by a body of water.
I mean, Armenia and Kazakhstan are part of the same CSTO security agreement, so there's that tie. But yeah, I don't. The protests were in response to deregulation of petroleum or oil prices, of a removal of a gas price cap. But I was surprised because I didn't follow the protests especially closely at the time. But didn't Russia provide aid to basically brutally crush them? Or were they more successful than that? So I
distracted.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I thought it was like a Belarus case where, unfortunately, tragically, a bunch of people died, and the regional.
That was the end of that.
Yeah, exactly. Was brutally enforced. So this if it is true, and it's not kind of just like okay, let's not do this again kind of thing, but nothing happens. I'm surprised and glad that kind of pressure still produced a result.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where almost by definition you can't know how serious it is from just the headline, because the nuance is everything with something like this. Whether or not these are meaningful reforms, whether or not he intends to actually see this through, whether or not this is something internally thought through as a good idea to hedge their bets, or whether it's an external thing to force their hand that they feel coerced by, like all of that nuance is the only way to really make sense of something like this. There's really no way to know that just with the headline, unfortunately. But even like, all right, let's even say that happens. I mean, they'll just revoke it the next time they want to be a dictator. Like, if it really is going to come down to like a civil conflict or martial law, usually these guys don't give up power, even if it does look like it's going to turn ugly, which is exactly how it was resolved last time, as you say, like bringing in Russian support. Maybe this is a function of the fact that Russia's now too bogged down in their own.
Yeah, they're too divided.
So maybe Putin used to have a thing where he's like, "Hey, I'll reinforce you with several hundred or even 1,000 troops whenever you need, any day you need." And now that he's seeing that those reinforcements are tied up elsewhere, he's like, "Hey, let's negotiate a settlement." Maybe it had a downstream effect like that.
Yeah, and Russia asked Kazakhstan for help in the Ukraine invasion, and they refused to send anyone.
Yeah, probably because they don't trust both the soldiers they'd send and their population to not overthrow them while the soldiers are out.
Yeah.
I mean, either way, right? Because like militaries are not usually very trustworthy in these kinds of dictatorial states because they very often have coup d'etats, and the population, if they need to be repressed militarily, can't see that the military is missing.
Very true.
Well,
time will tell. We'll check back in. I pulled up the article. It's because it's extremely short. Looks like the main things are to strengthen the parliament, move from a super presidential system to a presidential with parliamentary
super presidential
system. That's the word that they use, and to reestablish.
Also known as a dictatorship.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the idea. I like the sound of super president, though.
I'm not a dictator or an autocrat. I'm a super president. Das Uber president.
It sounds like some sort of made up like Discord administrator level.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they just keep inventing.
Sorry,
we
botched
levels.
it. We gave it to the super president has total control of your server now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any particular emotional or intellectual investment in the progress of this conflict in Kazakhstan because I haven't followed it, but it sounds like at least for some reason it's working out to some degree. Obviously, we don't know the details.
Yeah, I mean, for the president to even say this is, I think an indication that he at least feels like he needs to give lip service, which is still something.
It's
obviously,
a step in the right direction.
Obviously, it may not materially impact anyone.
See what happens when the number one hegemon in the region stops fucking places over? Democracies get better.
Well, they start fucking a different place over.
Yeah, because they're busy fucking other people. But like, Putin moved all his risk pieces out of Kazakhstan, and now Kazakhstan gets to have like a mini political revolution.
That's exactly what happened when World War I and World War II happened, and it basically ended colonialism as they knew it because they couldn't afford to have troops in both places.
Too busy ganking each other.
Whenever you start a huge fucking stupid pointless conflict, you're basically saying goodbye to anyone who was on the edge of being controlled.
Yeah.
So there's usually some positive downstream effects from horrific evil conflicts.
Thank you, Europe, the dark continent.
Yeah.
All right, let's
cinematic universe.
Dark parallel universe Europe. Yeah.
Let's transition from low stakes topics to high stakes topics. From a Pennsylvania news site called Penn Live, parentheses, Patriot News.
Oh yes, is this crazy right-wing chuddery?
No, it's not.
No.
Please. Dorito bags will now have 5 fewer chips thanks to inflation.
Well, that puts them at like 2 chips. So I don't know how that's going to work.
This is an affront to our culture.
You know, sometimes we need to ground the show by talking about things that affect us, normal, red-blooded Americans.
All right, but the key question is: are these those little bags or like a big, huge bag?
Yeah, the stakes could be even higher. I was thinking the big bags.
Because if it's like a snack bag and you're missing 5 chips, you may as well not buy it at all. That's like half the bag.
With the least Dorito dust on your fingers, throw the first stone.
Yeah, Doritos bags will now contain 1 pixie dust straw full with Dorito flavoring.
It will contain air and broken promises.
Oh shit! They should get into what do they call those pixie sticks? They should sell savory Doritos spice pixie sticks.
Ugh.
People would eat that.
They've been selling a 2/3 air bag this entire time. How much more air do they need?
Apparently, at least some more hot air.
Got him.
Oh, Jesus.
Thank that, Frito-Lay. So, Frito-Lay, like every other corporation, has been moaning about inflation, warning about how they need to find ways to make up for mysterious issues. Sometimes they overtly blame labor for increased prices. Other times they just point at, quote unquote, the supply chain and other kind of general causes for inflation. But like all of those companies, their profits were up like 10% this year.
Yeah.
The supply chain.
Every time that a company does stuff like this, it reminds me of the husband who comes home and it's like, yeah, I cheated, but you weren't putting out.
Yeah.
It's always like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? If you actually want to say something like that, then you need to show the fucking books. Like, okay, make your books publicly available and show to us where your budget went up. Or shut the fuck up. Like, there's nothing here. You can't make a statement like that without any evidence and expect some sort of sympathy or understanding. I don't understand why they even waste their breath on that kind of shit. Just straight up say, like, we're raising prices.
Yeah. If you like Doritos, eat shit. Spend more money.
It's like honesty here is genuinely better. I would rather they're just like, yeah, we're greedy. We want more money. Buy the chips, pig. Because that's what they're thinking. They're just thinking we're not going to notice, or if we do notice, we can't do anything about it. Trying to say like it's your fault, America, you shouldn't have raised inflation through the powers of the economy that you somehow have control over. And so pay more for chips, fucker. Like, what?
Stop being selfish and wanting employment, and then once you get employment, wanting that to be better, pay you better, have better benefits.
Really, this is your fault because you guys wanted a minimum wage, and that had a negative effect on inflation.
I have to get another burrito branded super yacht.
Exactly. I mean, because like I throw
I
out.
have to go to my genetics department and create what's the cheetah's name?
Chester.
We have to make a Chester cheetah that I can go on a safari and hunt and kill and put his head on my wall.
That's good. Write that down.
Dark?
Write that down for our satire film that we're developing.
I mean, that's seriously like the next plot of the next Jurassic Park movie. They already made the fucking like Verizon Saurus or whatever. They're working on a Chester cheetah.
The what?
They better be.
The Verizon Saurus?
Yeah, it was like a main plot of the second Jurassic World.
Oh,
there was like a corporate sponsored dino that had like a big brain. It was like, it's stupid. It was garbage, you know.
Sounds like it.
Like this sentence is not a factual statement, right? Like this is not a proven statement. They're just saying like, what did Doritos corporate's memo say? That's news.
But see, this is from some local Pennsylvania psychos. So I want to hear their explanation as to who's to blame. Like hippies, gay people, like the homeless in San Francisco. Like who's the target of the ire? Because that's the funniest part.
I'm just saying, it's bad enough when they're doing like police stenography and they're like, okay, the police say that a bullet leaving a cop's gun was involved in an altercation with a body. You know, it's like, yeah, okay. When they're doing it, the police, at least they have the justification of like, okay, this is a trusted authority that we as a society needlessly worship. Why the fuck are they trusting a random corporate propaganda advertisement as factually correct without checking it in any way?
Because we love corporations. They employ us. They make us happy. They give us money. They give us purpose and meaning in life.
You know, Doritos Corporation is really our frenemy. Like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Because it's obviously to their advantage to say some shit like it's due to inflation. But the only reason you should be publishing that in the news is either to ridicule it or to fact check it. This doesn't seem to be either.
I'm shocked they're not saying it's Putin's fault. That like,
yeah,
Doritos, you'd get 5 more per bag if it wasn't for Putin. I want like the Dorito soldiers on the front lines shooting like Dorito launchers.
Because this is on the same level of those stupid articles that were cropping up for like a year, which is like, business goes out of business because workers don't want to work anymore.
Yeah,
like that's what this is. They're just like mindlessly reprinting this.
Yeah,
obviously the stakes are low. It's just an example of like, there's no area in which the media will fail to do any kind of actual investigative journalism on a question.
Correct.
And
because they're not investigative journalists. They're just random losers. Just local shit news. They're not. This isn't fucking The Intercept.
By throwing out the fact that they're still making like I think it's like 7 to 10% increase in profit year over year.
Oh, it's down this year though.
It doesn't even matter because if they take a hit in profit, they're still making like $7 billion. But that's not allowed. It has to number always go up. That's the only thing that can happen. And push that as far as you can. That red line. It's just like such a kind of accepted concept. This is a precept even that like profit can never go down, and even your average person who's not benefiting from that at all, who's just like a construction worker, an office worker, whatever. So many people just accept it like that's the law of the world. Yes, we have to suffer increased prices for things that we need, like food and like Nestle produced water, whatever the case is. If you
their number can go up.
Yeah, so number can go up. And it's not the corporation's fault for not taking a tiny hit to their billions of dollars.
Or, not managing their business better.
No.
Or, being good at capitalism. No. All the apologetics for them. Everyone else gets to suffer so their number can go up.
They're acting like they're a utility. They're acting like it's like Social Security has to remain solvent.
Yeah.
Well, for some people,
Doritos does not have to remain solvent. Doritos can go under. It's allowed to go under. It's just a company. I don't know about that, dude.
Could we survive without Doritos, Alex?
I think we will have fewer deaths without Doritos. Yes.
But will life be worth living?
Okay, we can take Doritos out to the cooler ranch and put them out to pasture.
Haven't Doritos been experimenting with like absolutely insane flavors over the last few years? They've gone like full Willy Wonka.
Look, I've got nothing against Doritos. They're certainly a tasty chip, but they were only invented because it's like, hey, what are we going to do with these old fucking tortillas that didn't get used? Let's repurpose this garbage into a snack. And now that's a thing that everyone eats. Like, we were doing fine before they existed. Just saying. We don't need to treat them as though they're like, essentially a telecom company, the water supply of the state. Like, if Doritos come out, it's like, oh well.
But what am I gonna do without my rare NFT purple bag of spicy sweet chili Doritos? What am I gonna do if that doesn't exist in the world?
Is this our next deep dive, Jason?
Yes.
Flavor of Doritos ranked.
I mean, this is how fucking scummy they are. They couldn't even just say, okay, it's the same number of chips, but we raised the price like 10 cents. It's like they couldn't even acknowledge that they were fucking people, so they had to take it out of the actual product.
Price is the same. You just feel like you're getting scammed more.
Yeah. Like, I think most people would have been fine with the same number of chips, just 10 cents more.
We already raised the price last month, so now we have to do something different.
I want people to throw their Doritos in like the fire in protest.
I want to see the inverse of this statement, which is like Doritos company significantly increases number of chips in bag proportionate with corporate profit. Like
then
something
they'd actually have blood on their hands.
Doritos is increasing the amount that you get to keep pace with the decline in the American workers' wages. So, like, the American workers' purchasing power has declined over time, so they have to lower the price of Doritos to accommodate that. Like, the logic of this is backwards. They're only making this adjustment to, as you say, maintain the same or higher level of profit for the company. It has nothing to do with whether the consumers can actually afford the product under the circumstances given. But they're talking about it like it's natural law.
Yeah, this is evolution.
It's just absurd.
Darwin once said that Doritos adapt based on their environment.
Mm-hmm.
St. Augustine of Hippo suggested that Doritos must always be fixed at the certain profit margin, and any deviance from that is a sin against God.
Damn straight.
Yeah, I think this was part of the Sermon on the Mount, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
That's why I started with let he who has the least Cheeto dust on them cast the first stone.
It would have been so much better if this was about Cheetos. We could have gotten 2 different bits out of it.
Whatever, it's all the same.
I mean, it probably is the same company. I don't know what the fuck. Frito company or something.
Yeah, the Frito Lay.
Or like Frito layoffs.
PepsiCo is owned by Satan or whatever.
Yeah,
that's good.
Speaking of Satan, I think we're fired up enough for this article now from The Guardian. CIA black site detainee served as training prop to teach interrogators torture techniques.
Oh,
okay,
God.
Come on, man. Come on, man.
It's darker than black article.
I guess this was probably the guy they just released back to Saudi Arabia.
Maybe his name's Ammar al-Baluchi. Do you remember his name?
Al-Baluchi?
I mean, forgive me, I could be pronouncing it wrong, but
is it spelled like Steve Belushi?
No, it's not
the guy who died, Jim Belushi. Who died? I don't know.
Newly declassified documents reveal Ammar al-Baluchi was repeatedly slammed against the wall while naked until all trainees received certification.
Wait a sec. What is this course? Take the poor naked man and slam him on the ground, and then you get like a certificate?
Eliminating cognitive dissonance was probably the name of the course.
Jesus Christ.
Really fucking dark stuff.
Learning cognitive dissonance is a really nice way of saying learning to desensitize yourself to human suffering.
Uh-huh.
Bizarre. Well, I mean, we all kind of know stuff like this goes on, but
yeah, that was my thought. Is like,
I think that scene from GTA 5.
We're all aware of how fucking evil the CIA is. The mass death that they're responsible for, mass suffering they're responsible for.
Yeah, but was the Latina girl who went first college graduate of her household the one who did it too? Like, Remember this insane evil ad campaign they did?
Yeah, diversity in the CIA.
The neuroatypical
CIA
Latinx
is too
woman
woke
is cutting this dude's junk off.
I don't even think they released this guy yet. I think he's still in Guantanamo.
Got more dudes to certify.
It's not the guy who was released. There's only been 2 released during the Biden administration.
And there aren't that many left.
I think they're still fucking doing this. This is fucking shameless.
This is just a status update. Awesome.
Guy's still having his nuts electrocuted to prove to people that it's cool.
Holy shit, America's so evil. It's comical. I mean, this is like Dr. Evil would guffaw at this. Come on, Scott, really?
Pretty standard. I would be slammed ritually against the wall to desensitize people to human suffering.
While naked.
I just like
wild. And this guy is gonna become a supervillain if we let him out, or just like be the next Uber driver as well,
or be unable to reintegrate into human society because he's a battered shell of a human being from being tortured nonstop for decades.
Yeah, an Uber driver.
Well prepared for that.
Oh my God,
good stuff.
It's just so like black and white evil, you know. It's just like the absolute villainy of this kind of thing. I mean, to just treat someone like an object.
Do you think they have a guy dressed as what's the guy from 24?
Jack Bauer.
Yeah, they do Jack Bauer cosplay on Fridays. Casual Friday.
I mean, yeah, they probably have 24 playing 24/7. Just to
it's just on every TV in the background.
Yeah. Showing people how Muslims are behind every evil plot in the world, like that show preached about every single week.
The fact that this is happening at all is like the perfect recruitment tool for all these people who they hate. Like if the CIA and NSA and whatnot were really concerned about domestic terrorism attacks against the United States, then having it be like public knowledge that we basically treated this guy like a fucking punching bag for the last 20 years. I mean,
And this is why the CIA's argument is, hey, Guardian, hey, news organizations, don't publish this because this threatens us because it creates more terrorists.
Or just don't fucking do it.
Evil we are.
Just don't fucking do it then.
No, it's your fault. The blame's on you, not us.
They held him for 9 years before they even appointed him an attorney.
You're the ones who can change your behavior, not us.
Jesus Christ.
Evil. Yeah, it's just fun.
I don't know. There's not much to say about this because it's so deranged. But why do they even need to? Like, if you're okay, so you're applying. You're nice like fresh faced Harvard grad or whatever, and you're applying to join Team Evil and become like a torturer. Do you really need to go through desensitizing someone when they've agreed to that?
No.
So if someone's like, yes, I've just joined the Waffen SS, but I'm not sure whether I can really handle this. What the fuck do you think you have to be a fucking psychopath to even go into this in the first place. You don't need to torture a guy to prove that. This is like a hazing ritual.
Yeah, I think the certification thing is their excuse. I think they're just doing it for fun, for sport.
Yeah, I think they just like found some guys torture him and they're like, yeah, whatever, we'll just say he had to do it. We actually, after the fact, instituted a policy of you have to specifically haze this guy.
Yeah, here, take
to
this
justify what they were doing.
Take this photoshopped certificate of like you're a good torturer now. Here's your Boy Scout badge.
It's to weed out like the 1 in 20 people who has like some small buried spark of conscience and doesn't laugh maniacally.
Yeah, it's like the end of the like British, spy stuff for like shoot this dog.
Yeah. Kingsman. Yeah.
We need a little Boy Scout badge now, but it's a tiny image of all those dudes holding up the naked guy at Abu Ghraib. That very famous photo.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I don't know.
Put that on your Eagle Scout.
When the Nazis created like special squadrons of people to murder their victims in the Holocaust, they usually lied to them about what they were going to go do. So a lot of them would freak out when they were forced to finally confront what their job was going to be, which is just slaughtering civilians. I don't think anyone's confused about what the U.S. is doing at Guantanamo. It just strikes me as the kind of thing that, like, if you're going there, you know what's up.
Yeah, but these guys in Guantanamo mostly live.
Well, yeah, they mostly live while being like kept awake for 4 days straight, forced to like spit on the Quran, have like dumps taken on their chest against their will, like just like the most heinous shit you can imagine, short of death, and some still do end up dying. It's just if you can stomach any of that shit, then I think you're too insane to feel like ethical compulsions about what happens to humans. I don't know. Maybe that's too black and white, but like, I just don't know who these people are who are like, okay, sure, we can torture people like these 36 ways, but that 37th kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
It's like the Thomas Friedman, who like is perfectly happy to write about all this, but and like justify horrid acts against foreigners, but if ever put into the situation, is too much of an absolute coward and shriveled mass of academic paunch to actually go through with any act. They have to make sure that you have that kind of violent metal in your marrow. I don't know. It's just it's very miserable, and even though I'm not responsible for this at all, it still makes me feel ashamed to live in this country.
Well, especially since for a long time we were pretending like this was not really happening very much, and like it was only for a few guys. It was only because like we could stop a nuclear weapon going off in the city because we're all Jack Bauer kind of shit.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, this was certification. This was standard procedure. Like, it's not like, okay, it was a few extreme cases, right? If this is certification, then the implication is this like entered a manual of style. Like,
they all have.
All right, in order to move to stage 2, you need to punch him in the balls 13 times.
It's torture 101.
It's just for that to be that regimented and formalized totally puts lie to the whole like, oh, it was rare and infrequent and a few bad apples type bullshit they like to say about, as you say,
of course. We never believed that shit anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who did, though. A lot of like guilty liberals were like, they couldn't really mean all the time, could they? It's like, yes, they could, and here's the evidence.
Care what these dawdling liberals think.
Like, I think that's like most of that's like most of the country.
All right, suck shit. I mean, don't have to tell them. You're an idiot.
All right, well, let's go to the next one. This one's horrible.
Yep, it is horrible. All right. Let's move on to a lighter article. Enjoy it while it lasts. From the University of Essex. World's most boring person discovered by researchers.
This can't be real.
Objectively, science has shown.
Science
this is the Luke Wilson guy for what's that movie? Man, I am brain dead.
Emotional vampire discovered in Stakeout.
Idiocracy, where they need the most average plain man to preserve.
Yeah.
So who is it?
What are they going to name him? They're going to call him out?
Yeah. I got to see this lad.
Well, I don't know if they actually name them, but they do list scientifically found the top 5 most boring jobs, top 5 most exciting jobs, and top 5 most boring hobbies one can have.
So this isn't even a boring guy. It's just all his other stats add up to the most average boring.
Yes.
Oh, come on. This is one of the most deceptive articles yet.
The top 5. Okay, guys. Guess. You don't have to guess all of them, but guess what the top 5 most boring hobbies are.
Knitting?
Nope. Super exciting.
Hopscotch?
Nope. They are
the wheel with the rod that you spin, like Thomas Sawyer era.
Like
yo-yoing?
Hoop and stick.
Yeah, hoop and stick.
Dropping or whatever it's called.
Planking?
Geocaching should be on here for sure.
Geocaching?
Planking has to be in there, right?
Hiking? What other shit I've judged?
They are quantitatively decided upon.
All right,
one, sleeping.
Fuck off!
That's not a hobby.
I'm offended.
Shut up. Yes, it is. 2.
Sleeping's for fat people.
My hobby is this required thing that all of us do.
Yeah. 2, breathing. No.
I think they mean like social, like.
I'm a recreational sleeper.
Yeah, like a recreational sleeping.
I've got 6 ranks in narcolepsy. Like what?
Oh my god. 2, You'll love this one, Jason. 2 is religion. Religion is the second.
Yes, got him.
That's a hobby?
University of Essex showed them what's for.
I'm really getting confused now, given that we had that other stupid fucking article.
Religion's not a fucking hobby.
We need to do our productive hobbies like sleeping and
religion's like the number 2 identity that people who are religious use as like that makes them who they are. Oh my god.
3.
I mean, it is boring at least.
It is boring. I mean, you know, they've made some fun art, singing some fun songs.
Depends which book they're reading.
3 is watching TV. 4 is observing animals.
Oh, shut up!
This is so meaningless.
And 5 is mathematics.
What is this based on? How are they measuring this? You can't quantify this.
I looked up the article just to make sure it was real because I thought you might have actually gotten punked. And this is the subhead.
Yeah.
It is a religious data entry worker who likes watching TV and lives in a town.
Lives in a town.
No, you know who's really the most boring article? You are.
That grinds my gears, America.
Yeah.
You, England.
This is the most boring article we've read.
I don't even know what the fuck they're trying to say here.
It's not a criticism of you, Aiden. I'm just putting them in their place.
Yeah, no, they deserve it.
Fuck you, article. Fuck you, Essex.
Like, do I want to hang out with a religious data entry worker who likes watching TV and lives in a town? Probably not, but there's someone out there for him. How is this the most boring person on earth?
I mean,
like, there's people who are in comas. Like, there are people who are. What I'm saying to you is there are people who are literally brain dead.
I'm drawing a line in the sand.
So it's not a question of their fault, but there are definitely more boring people than someone who has a conscious, functioning brain and can communicate in a language.
I don't know.
If you've met that threshold, then you're not the most boring person on earth.
I think we might have to. We just agree to disagree on what constitutes boring.
Are you going to go hang out with like Terry Schiavo after this?
Yeah,
like, what are you saying?
That's fun. Some people would enjoy that. People watching, taking care of someone. That's its own hobby.
Well, okay, whoever's doing that is the most boring person on earth.
So the
and Alex's true colors come out.
The heavy quote, Dr. Van Tilburg, who ran this study. I just want to read this quote. I would have thought that accountants would be seen as boring, but effective and the perfect person to do a good job on your tax return. The truth of the matter is, people like bankers and accountants are highly capable and have power in society. Perhaps we should try not to upset them and stereotype them as boring.
I'm sorry. So this is just secretly cover for let's support rich people?
What's happening?
Is
this a scientific study or not? We thought we would do a scientific study, but we realized it might offend some people.
I mean, is this guy just like desperate to get his fucking doctorate, his like kid through his grad student passed? I mean, what is this garbage?
We realized math was extremely boring, but I also realized I was doing a mathematical study, and then I felt bad.
This really sounds like this person's like ex-wife said they were boring, and they had to scientifically find a way to prove them wrong.
No, I'm not the most boring.
There is someone worse than me, so you shouldn't have divorced me.
Take me back, please, Martha, please.
This is why I deserve the kids. This is fucked.
I would really like it if the sentence after the sentence was like, and it's your new boyfriend, so and so, and they just named the guy. Yeah.
Bitch.
Yeah, one of the qualities is being married to someone named Martha.
Yeah.
Martha.
Where's Martha?
Your ex is named Martha too?
They're both like cucked. That'd be a way better Zack Snyder.
Yeah, exactly.
We both got cucked.
We need to go both write articles about it.
We need to go back.
I'm calling Albert Brooks. Not Albert Brooks. What's his name?
David Brooks.
David Brooks. I'm calling David Brooks. He publishes all my shit. That's good.
I'm calling David Frum. The most boring asshole.
Dude is so boring. But
good stuff.
Where's Rachel?
Someone agrees though with some of these premises. From Bloomberg, the only opinion piece this week, the Fed needs a boring bank regulator. Agree, disagree? Do we think we need something?
As opposed to what? Someone controversial?
Yeah, like what are they talking about? Is this because there's some, like, as you say, like purple-haired, Inuit woman who's gonna get hired, and they're like, no, we have to have a boring guy.
It's about the recent sinking of Biden's nomination of Raskin, which she was made into like a huge like major leftist because she believed in climate change. So this is basically another article like
fuck?
Yeah, boring is just code word for status quo conservative.
So smuggling in the idea of unscientific and irrational as boring.
Correct.
Or at least keep that shit to yourself and out of politics, out of financial policy, which we all know financial policy never has any effect on anyone.
They want the person who has the hand on the handle to the soul thresher to be someone who's not queasy about it, who's not loud and controversial.
Yeah, someone who's certified.
Just crank the handle, just have your certificate of torture, and just do the job that we're asking you to do, which is be evil.
She would not have used Bellucci's balls as a punching bag.
Oh, God, I think I have to have diarrhea again.
Based on that sentence or just in general?
Both. I'll be listening in the wings, though.
Well, what's interesting about a unambiguously dogshit publication like Bloomberg is that you can read it for the news, because all you have to do is assume the opposite of what they say, because they will never give you something good. So if someone says like they need a boring banker, it's like, oh, interesting. So why would that be bad?
Yes.
Right. Like it's just one to one. Like it will give you a sense of there's something bad in this information, so you need to discover it. It's like a nice little Sudoku.
Yeah,
you have to fill in the blanks to get to the answer.
It is. It's such a relief when publications just wear their biases and their missions on their sleeve. It really makes everything so much easier going forward. Yeah, I mean, this article isn't exceptional. Obviously, there's like we hear this 1,000 times. This idea of keep politics out of politics. But it's just I think there's especially like there's like a separate level to it where there's this idea that economics is sterile and divorced from kind of any kind of like policy considerations that we usually attach to like social policies in the way that we assume that those directly affect people's lives. It's like, can trans people enter bathrooms or not? Can gay people marry each other? When in fact they have much greater and wide-ranging and much greater legacies and shockwave effects than those kind of social policies normally do. And they're also scrutinized much less. One, because they're given this kind of cover, but two, because they're less easy to have hot button or even just understand if you don't understand the jargon that they use.
But I mean, even with those issues, it's like those are unambiguous. There's an unambiguously correct answer to whether those things should be permissible.
Yeah.
So saying like, well, let's not overturn the apple, upset the apple cart. It's like, well, the only thing that would be causing a problem is if you artificially inject prejudice and cruelty into a system. The neutral position should not be inject cruelty into a system. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So the only thing that is political in the sense that they mean it, which is to say disruptive and agitative, is something that deviates from liberal democratic norms and assumptions about human rights and civil rights and social services being functional. So whenever someone's like, oh, this radical who wants gay people to have rights, it's like, well, that's not radical. It should never have been considered radical in any way. So to frame it that way is just a way of saying people think the term radical is bad. People think the term political is bad. So let's just tar and feather anyone who's saying something that makes any kind of sense as those words. But the reality is it's extremely radical and bizarre to be holding on to antiquated prejudices from like the 13th century about whether like sodomites can have rights in 2022. It just doesn't make any sense to have that kind of argument. That's a completely insane and antiquated thing to even be arguing about, let alone to make it seem as if you're somehow automatically in the status quo correct position because you're a bigot. So yeah, it's very weird when this kind of language is smuggled in, which is like the political thing to do is to take this radical leftist position of just everyone has rights, or people should be treated equally, or people should get fair things. Like that's just so fucking weird. And it's especially weird, as you say, when it's in like this dry economic context, which I mean, is anyone confused by what goes on in banks? Does anyone think that that's like helping the left in any way?
This is why banks are the frenemies of the left.
Yeah.
I mean, Alex, yes, 30% of Americans believe that because they all buy into essentially QAnon conspiracies that the bankers are in it with the cultural Marxists. So yes.
The bankers, the purest representatives of maintaining the status quo of capitalism, are in on it with the Marxists.
Yes. That is what the right wing of America believes.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense because it's what the Nazi propaganda was, that the Jews controlled both capitalism and communism.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't view that as capitalism. They view that as evil, usury, cultural school of bullshit to overthrow real good capitalists who just love corporations.
Yeah, because the anti-Semitic dog whistle is even stronger than the political dog whistle.
Correct.
Yeah.
So yes, millions of people believe those things.
It's just it's like it's incoherent without that frame, because you're talking about things that are essentially diametric opposites outside of some sort of bizarre lens to view them through. I mean, bankers have pretty much zero truck with Marxists for very obvious reasons.
Yes, they're incompatible with Marxist theory.
We're not a match.
It's a no for me, dog. Well, I think 2 more articles to finish up this ep. We'll go to another classic, just always reliable cover for deregulation and conservative economics. The Wall Street Journal. People are quitting full-time jobs for contract work and making 6 figures.
On a piece of paper with a pencil. And they're cool. They have hands and feet.
Yeah. Total garbage. Total horseshit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all understand the garbage of this, but when you want to just clarify it in case people don't immediately understand.
Just because you have a full-time job doesn't mean you have any of the rights that you should have as a full-time employee. Secondly, getting a contract job, you definitely don't have any of those rights or protections. I'm sure they're popping out a couple of exceptions of like the nurse who went into fucking, OnlyFans, and all the couple success cases of like my millionaire mom made my corporation, I sell toys because I'm a 12-year-old Australian girl. Like all the stories that we've covered over this entire show, all our episodes. Like, yes, there are occasional examples of people who do contract work and succeed and make their own thing. The vast majority of people who work have full-time employment because that's the way our system's designed. That's you get insurance through your work because of deals made during World War II. Like, this is not this is obviously the wave of the future. It's the way that capitalism kills us. This is the fact that Wall Street Journal is peddling this is like, yes, please go lose more workers' rights. Fuck off and die. This is one of the most evil things they've ever published.
So it's also falsely conflating several things that are just like trends and making them seem like they're a direct explanation of one another. People quitting full-time jobs has to do with, as they've already talked about in several papers, like this Great Recession / Great Resignation, where people are realizing that working during a deadly disease pandemic at an advanced age is probably not a good idea, and they're just kind of willing to live in comparative poverty on meager retirements rather than face that. Then you have the issue that the entire American economy for decades now has been shifting towards contract work because they've been trying to undermine, as Jason mentioned, workers' rights that had been negotiated for full-time workers. So they're skirting the edge of that by employing people shy of full-time and giving them fuck all benefits while still giving them minimum wage. Then you have the issue that they're saying making 6 figures, which is almost certainly cherry picking, as has been mentioned, a handful of cases, and then making the exception the rule to make it seem as though these 2 previous trends, both of which are horrible, are somehow good, instead of the indication of like the failing, dying gasps of a formerly functional economy. So you have people who can't afford to live even remotely like the lives that their parents or grandparents lived, working increasingly miserable jobs with hardly any benefits, if they can even find that work. And then they're being told that they somehow should be making a ton of money that way, and they're not, because the vast majority are not. So now they need to feel inadequate on top of everything else. Because the amount of people making 6 figures in these contexts, I guarantee, is fucking 1 in 20, 1 in 50 kind of numbers.
Yeah, at least.
So it's like your life sucks, but we're going to tell you it doesn't, and also fuck you for thinking that this could ever have been better.
Yeah, it's hyperbole weaponized to weaken labor and explain away the kind of contentions that you have and complaints you have about the misery that you feel but can't quite articulate because of the decaying system we live in. Not much more to say about it, I think.
It's bad, folks.
I want people to think through the logic of this. Like, instead of just absorbing information passively, imagine if you were like an active reader. You're like, okay, what is the logic of what is being said? People are quitting full-time work, which has benefits, for contract work, which does not have benefits. And that is increasing their income. Well, why would that be the case, right? Because you don't have unions almost ever for contract work, and unions negotiate higher salaries per hour. So you're almost certainly not going to have a higher hourly rate. You don't have benefits, which would be calculated into your income. So that's not being factored in. You don't have a retirement plan because that would be normally factored in. That's not. What about contract work, right, would be increasing your income? It's not. I mean, it's certainly not clear in the headline, but there's no coherent reason why your income would go up from being.
The only reason would be that you're not regulated to a 40-hour work week anymore. So now you're working 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
But you're making six figures. Also spending a couple $1,000 more on health insurance if you can get it, but whatever. Yeah. Bad stuff. But good stuff is how we're going to end this episode as we continue to build our communal thesis that we are just primates. A previously unproven concept.
What?
From The Guardian. You'll see, don't worry. Orangutans use slang to show off their coolness, studies suggest. They're just like us.
They have language?
I love it. Like shorthand.
So they're doing like the okay symbol and then punching each other? Like, what are they saying?
I don't know. All I know is this is a great headline.
I always thought orangutans were super chill. Aren't they the super like laid back apes?
Yes, they're very chill.
Do they need to be cool?
Yeah,
they're all very cool.
They're just doing the hang 10 sign 24/7.
Hang and dong.
Oh, Christ.
Actually, they usually have giant guts.
Yeah.
Covering dong.
Stop talking about orangutan dick. We got it.
No. You can't stop me.
Is this non-verbal slang? I just don't understand how a non-verbal species can use slang.
Listen, bro, I don't read the news. I just report it. Yeah, I mean, they must be vocal in some way, right? Like, just like birds can communicate, even though they don't have language. I'm sure they have their hoots and hollers, and they figured ways to, shorten certain hoots to sound cooler.
So they're doing like Al Pacino, like instead of just hooting, they're like, ah! They're doing like the big ridiculous noises. Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Wow,
huge guts. Fat asses. Like I don't know what else they'd be doing. Like I don't get it.
And that's okay. We can't always get different cultures at first glance, but I wouldn't mind learning some orangutan slang to pull out at parties. They
want to walk like you, talk like you. Woo, 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 woo.
I'm slanging orangutan. All right. Any final thoughts on this revelatory last article I've offered you?
I knew it. I've always known.
It's true.
I should have mentioned Gigantopithecus.
Jason has been proselytizing this for as long as I've known him.
He's part of the orangutan clan.
I'm like the ancient aliens guy. Like, humans are animals. Isn't this fascinating?
You should start selling your hair like him, straight up all the time.
Oh God,
I could try.
Is he still alive? He seems like a guy that would have died in some kind of extreme phenomena, like autoerotic asphyxiation at like 800 feet in the air or something.
Yeah, give it time. It's just him going like probably.
Yeah. All right, lads. We have seen a few small spots of brightness, some very dark depths, and we made it out the other side for yet another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast. Thank you for bearing with me. I tried to make this one not quite as long as other ones have been, knowing that CIA article would be in the middle.
Yeah, you just have to drop that deuce in there.
Yeah. And the shit in the well of this episode.
We all had to at some point.
But that's all for me. Thanks everyone for joining us.
See you next time.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential workers podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.